the MER is out. They did a small, I would say, a small summary, a little bit longer than the one line that they put last time, but it's generally, nothing huge in terms of analysis here. So we have an increase in production, which is, I think, bit more. Uh, we need to analyze a little bit more quickly, deeply, because it's not quite, just flat 23%. It's got its ups and downs. We do have a very a drop in high sec asteroid mining, but we had a mining expansion come out in November, and so we'll talk about that. And a lot of that shifted to ice mining because of the event. And then we have bounty prizes, the stabilized in December, but that's also mainly because they made pretty significant changes to the Winter Nexus event compared to previous year. We'll talk about it in a second as well. And then, yes, mineral prices are dropping quite quickly and still, and that's not surprising. I think the question is when will it stop? How far will it go? And it looks like a few alliances, and namely Angry's alliance, was mining heavily in December, I would say. And Angry can tell us about that. The worst thing,
So
tell us, please. Go ahead.
sorry, you finish. You finish.
No, I was my last joke, my last German joke for the day is, I mean, the biggest problem with the MER is still that it's back to front, and I can't deal with it. I don't know. I'm going to accept it one more month, and since I will be in Iceland by the end of the week, I would, or by the end of the month, I will probably personally go into whoever's office does the order of the MER, and I will fix this myself. Sorry, go ahead, Angry, please.
Was it the right order when you were in Australia and saw the other way around?
Yeah, we need to send him back.
That's it. I have to go. Okay. But yeah, let's look at the destruction versus production versus mining chart, and we do see a pretty significant mining bump here. Angry, tell us what's going on with the Imperium.
So basically, is that we finally got everything up and running, and people stopped. We didn't have 24/7 fleets now that drone lands is cleared. And the other thing, and the last point, so it's a lot more man hours available. And the last point is that the Equinox setup that our logistics teams did is we really chose to optimize for mining within range of CTAC-J, because for mining to really work in nullsec, you need to be able to protect rorquals, which can only happen within CJ. And the team did a really great job really optimizing our space for mining. And we can we built specific tools to optimize the way manpower and workforce flow. And from what I've been hearing from other people, it's been if you're trying to do it by yourself, by hand, or whatever tool CP can give you, or even a spreadsheet, it's a real pain, and you cannot squeeze nearly as much out of the Equinox system, as someone with a better setup.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, if you're wondering about that, look at the streams that Darkshines was doing with his Excel spreadsheet up, trying to divvy up the resources in the Equinox solve system, and it's quite complex. And I guess it's questionable whether that's interesting gameplay, right? But it is complex, and it is difficult to optimize, tedious to optimize for sure.
I know our cartographer loves it as like the best Sudoku there is. Like, you can't do it very often, but like sitting there and tinkering with it, it's just like that appeals to his style of games.
It's the Factorio part of the game. Yeah, so production seems to be way up, and that's the blue line up here. And the question there is, we saw a similar bump last time when we had an expansion, and some of that was the Barbaroga. This time we had the Odysseus, and the Odysseus was trading at about, I don't know, $1 trillion a week. So I think a significant portion of that bump is new ships and, people building new ships and people flying new ships and wanting to fly new ships. But that's not everything.
Do you think the Odysseus is the one driving that and not the Outrider? Because the Outrider is like very, very popular.
The consortium edition of the Destroyer is what I sell the most of by far. Like I trade, so like I sell a lot of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, since this is looking at the overall ISK value of the production, at least that is what we're speculating. The README file that is referred to in the footnote here, it doesn't exist anymore. CCP, in case you're watching. I was looking for it earlier. It's not in the download set. But the Odysseus was definitely much higher total volume traded versus the Outrider. But both quite significant. And so, this is probably the biggest part of that bump is new ships. And I think, based on my numbers, the Odysseus is the highest one, but certainly, it doesn't hurt having new ships that people want to build and people want to fly. Yeah, and then destruction, we saw the big bump here was the Dronelands PH collapse, right? That is this bump that happened more in November than December, and then we went back down in December, but not quite to where we were before. So it's still an overall bump, and not a bad destruction number, right?
It's definitely the lowest bump of any like large nullsec block collapse. Like, we were talking about this just before the show.
Yeah.
You can see the end of World War B of all those massive fights, which actually happens to be, if you defend your space and lose stuff, destruction is very high. If you don't defend your space, destruction's very low.
Yeah, these are not Titan fights, right? These are not massive amounts of capitals being destroyed. Right? This is a lot of structures, right?
Yeah.
So the proportion mined isn't all that interesting because it's, it hasn't changed that much. Yeah, it went back. You see the shift going back to null. One reason for that, as Angry mentioned, is Imperium getting set up and actually mining a shitload, as we will see in another graph. But overall, this is not where the big magic is. Production also in December, more or less, in terms of proportion, unchanged. We're seeing a little bit more in low sec overall than before, but not hugely different. And then in terms of destruction, we see here the big bump that was Dronelands PH collapse. That was a large portion of destruction moving towards null, but since then it has bounced back and we're back to pretty much previous levels in terms of low sec gaining back the proportion that it lost before. This is always difficult to cover because the slide is so small. So I'll ask you guys if you want me to zoom in on something particular. I'll start with one thing, and that is the trade volume in the Forge, which was almost 700 trillion, and that's a massive number. And that's very good to see. We had very high trade volume in November and very high trade volume in December. This week was the first week where it actually dropped down quite significantly, back down in January. But in December and November, we saw higher trade and also higher ISK velocity overall, which we'll see in a second here. But if there's another region you wanna talk about, oh yeah, MouseMat in chat is saying Plex sale related. Yes, for sure. So this was not only Plex sale related, but in December specifically, we had a New Eden store sale that actually made people use their Plex and buy Plex to use Plex. And so that was, since Plex is by far the biggest trade item in EVE, that was one big driver of the increased trade volume in the Forge. Okay, but guys, any other thing you wanna point out on the
I'd say
regional chart?
there's definitely a big shift in activity on the wormhole front. So the destruction's gone down by 1 trillion from 9.3 to 8 point something of the wormholes combined,
Mhm.
but the mining has increased by about 40%, and so has production. So
So
like
the
just a huge amount of extra production, which I assume is probably due to the abyssaling of gas and moon mining stuff. Not moon mining stuff. The mining mutaplasmids is like probably helped that along a lot.
What were their base mining and production numbers to begin with? It seemed like I'd assume that it was a 40% increase of not that much.
So the mining went from 5.8 trillion to 8.8 trillion.
that's
Production
wormhole
went
and
from
like these two wormhole sections
Yeah.
combined right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And production went from 7.5 to 9.3.
That's these two combined. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the destruction's gone down. So like it's getting very more safe and way more crabby, I guess.
In terms of mining overall, you see Insmother here taking the cake at 6.4 trillion, beating Veil of the Silent. Not wormholes, but kind of wormhole is all systems combined. And in terms of production, also Insmother, Imperium, outpacing most, not the Forge, which is Cheetah, and also not the Veil of the Silent at 23.5 trillion in production. And destruction-wise, there wasn't a clear winner this month, except for wormholes as a whole, doing about 8.9 trillion combined. Thera.
I really wish
Shattered.
they would break that out into wormhole by classes, because wormholes
Yeah.
as a whole is such an unuseful category.
I spoke with a certain someone about it, and essentially they don't want to give any. They don't want to dilute it anymore, make it more specific, because there's just the risk of people will be able to glean from that
Well,
information.
it's
where
really
people are.
pointless because they already do that in the kill dump. There's absolutely you already
Yeah.
gave that information elsewhere. There's
Yeah.
no point to trying to QC it at this level. All you're
It,
doing
it,
is
it, I
adding a
didn't say it
level
was
of effort.
consistent. Like they don't allow for the indexes to be tracked in ESI, for example, in wormholes. Otherwise, you'd be able to see very quickly if someone's moved into a certain area, things like that.
Yeah, but like
Right.
in
But
terms of like
for
C5
this,
versus C4 space that isn't super granular. Like knowing that somebody has moved to a high class wormhole, but you don't know where. I mean, they are good at scouting each other anyway. I don't think it would really matter.
yeah, I'm talking specifically about this graph. They should break out wormholes into all of wormholes, so you can. So there's sort of these somewhat uninformed people saying that all wormholes, blah blah blah. Well, wormholes is really a couple environments stuck into one, so you can't really call it.
Yeah.
Use
Oh, I
all
guarantee.
wormholes as a region to justify an argument.
I guarantee like 80% of this activity that you're seeing in the numbers here is C5 and C6 combined, and that's it. Like C4 down is irrelevant.
For
as far as
destruction,
concerned,
I
would
would
say.
disagree. We've seen from
Yeah,
previous
sure,
stuff before that destruction is not C5, C6 dominated. The economics part of wormholes is, but the combat
Yeah.
part of wormholes is not C5, C6 dominated.
So NPC bounties, Veil of the Silent, that's pretty insane, 8.8 trillion. That's a very, very high number. That is only rivaled by maybe Fountain at 6.9 trillion. And then we have LP and trade we already talked about. Let's move on to here. This asteroid ore volume mined. So this is volume, cubic meters, not value. So in terms of volume, you might say that this new mining expansion has helped drive mining numbers, which doesn't seem all surprising, but it's nice to see.
I'm
I
surprised
wasn't
at how
around
consistent it was.
when it came out, but do they know if crits are counted in this or not?
Yeah, they have to be.
I They must be. Because I remember asking, but I can't remember what the answer was.
It's entering hold that they look at. So like you do
So it
get
does count
the
crits.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah crits are positive.
Yeah.
As I'm quite like pleasantly surprised. I thought because in the November you saw a huge spike from the expansion, and then I thought it would just drop down as people got tried the new thing, then went off, and it's been very consistent. So that's like a very. I'm sure CCP is very happy at that. The people who previously mined and have seen all their ores go down in value aren't happy, but
And this
that's what
does
you
not
get when more
include the
people
event
do it.
ice. You know, this is only asteroid ore, so this is not event related. This is just expansion related, and it has
Mhm.
it rose and it stayed there, which is cool. I mean, it's just good to see. It's people out there are mining. Period. Gas volume didn't really change all that much in December. Went back down to normal levels pretty much. But then this is ice mined, and so this does include event ice, which is, you know, I it's pretty pointless, I think, because it's not ice that is actually it has nothing to do with regular ice, the event ice. So I don't know why they put it in here. It doesn't make any sense. But I guess it's an indicator of how popular the event is or not. But that's it.
It'd be good if they actually had like an amount mined here that wasn't specific to low sec, high sec. If it just had event ice across all areas of space.
Yeah. So I don't know. I know I ask this every single year why they don't take it out, but apparently, you know, I also don't want to break something.
But
If
it's
it's
a tradition. Like how
yeah,
next year you can do the tradition. It's like we could ask again, why is this still in here? It's
I
like a
guess
tradition of why is this upside down? Why are they
uh,
back to front?
Like what do you do for Christmas? Well, I have Christmas dinner. I open presents and I ask CCP why event ice isn't still
that's
in
right.
there.
So you can look here. Like this year, the amount would enter here. So you might say that event ice mining was a little bit higher than it was now, because it's pretty constant over the years, and you can see the little low sec sliver that is event ice. Yeah, so we talked about this earlier, but this shows this weird little data error here in what is that? It's the beginning of the month or the end of the month, the end of November.
We think
it's
they
the 30th.
forgot that the 31st of November existed because they were busy on Halloween.
I went back and checked last month's MER, and the data is definitely in there. So they must have rerun it again, and there's just some error on that day, because there is some of this day in the December data, but just not all of it for some reason.
It's not
So it must have
it's
just
definitely
failed.
not a full day, because you can see it dropping off. You know, like the little data error has a slant. Okay, it goes down. It's interesting.
It's
So
November leap year.
whatever it is, let's just try to ignore it. The R4s and R8s aren't really changing in its ratio anymore, right? And the R16s seem to be just way over Metanoxed.
The 4 is going down still. It's just very, very slight.
Slowly.
It's less than
if you
it's less than a
squint.
percent month on month. Yeah. Yeah, you have to really squint. Like on the previous production graph, if you squint,
Yeah.
you can see like 2 pixels, which is pod from production.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, our R16s, R16s and R32s heavily Metanoxed, right? It's still it's still worth it apparently. And R64 is not so much, because you're just losing too much on Metanoxing them. But I don't know, Dujak, Angry, what's your current stance in nullsec about about Metanoxes? Where are we at right now?
Last time
Most-
I was doing the moons, it was like we're just giving them out to members who can be bothered to do it for themselves, because like we'd burn out our moon people if they had to nationalize it. But in general, like just as many as people can be bothered to put up is how many we have.
Burning Out Moon People.
We-
It's a good band name. I'm just taking notes. Burning Out Moon People. Like it. Okay, sorry, Angry.
All right. Yeah, we're fairly similar in that everything, anything people can take is mine, and anything that's not is Metanox. But I would say that outside of our specific moons that we harvest with Locust, almost anything out of Titan range of CJ is Metanoxed.
Just because it's safer, because you don't have bodies in space.
Yeah, it's really because of the way Metanox works, it's really not better than anomaly ores. So so at least R16 and some R32 isn't worth mining manually when there's essentially free anomaly sites from Solve.
So we have a year now of Metanox, over a year of Metanox being implemented, right? Are we still like from maybe Angry, from your perspective? Is it do you still consider it a success, the reintroduction of passive moon mining?
So I do think a success, although I think some of it could probably use a bit more tuning.
I will add this on behalf of our dear friend Young Puke, who might be lurking in the chat. There's a lot of great fights in low-sec that happen over Metanoxes. So, like, in terms of looking aside from the raw economic figures of their output, they definitely, like, provide something that people can be bothered to get out and fight over. And secondly, the negative of some of that are like huge Metanox empires where like certain groups have more Metanoxes than active members. So, like, if you can hold a lot of Metanoxes, you can have like an incredible amount of passive income for that.
Which is sort of what happened back when there was the passive moon miners from Posses and the siphon system. You would have
Every
small
single
amounts,
moon being
yeah.
owned by Pandemic Legion in
Yeah.
low-sec.
And every single one
Yeah,
of those
now
was
it's
a
like
siphon that was
Frat
anchored
and
by
Shadow
Hydra.
Cartel. Yeah, Frat and Shadow Cartel have like respectively like 400 and 550 Metanoxes by last
I will
count.
say on the subject of Frat, if you go to the next slide
Yeah,
of
here
the
we are.
moon value by region, so Veil the Silent has had a huge shift. About half of their Metanoxes have been converted into actually fracking moon mining
Refineries.
because their last month was 800 bill in total, and 300 bill of that was moon mining. Was the Metanoxes. So that's roughly half the Metanoxes, and then they've got an extra 400 bill on top of that in manual mining. So they've had like a big shift away from Metanox.
Yeah, I would expect that since they got a large influx of
Yeah.
population that need stuff.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because mineral prices are dropping and moon material prices weren't rising, at least. So it wasn't necessarily a reaction to market conditions or profitability of refineries versus Metanox. It was just now we have the people to manually mine them, right? And they're inherently more profitable.
It definitely makes
One
sense.
of the things that we'd see here, and that like somebody in the chat should just do this for us. Like I don't have the technical know-how, but like overlay this with like population density, and you'll see like the staging areas of big groups have a lot of mining, and the areas immediately surrounding, as Angry has been saying, like you can see everything in range of CTEC J is mined, and everything outside of Titan range of CTEC J is Metanoxes. And you can see here like Fountain for Init, heavily mined, outer ring right next to Init is 95% Metanoxes. Like it's in their sphere of influence, certainly. And
Insmother is this tiny sliver of green here.
Yeah, some of Insmother's not in range of CJ.
Yeah. All right, let's go to my favorite graph, the sinks and faucets. And so we have to immediately caveat this by saying there are two graphs in the MER that have money supply in it, a beginning of month money supply and an end of month money supply on this, and then we have a separate money supply chart. And this month they are vastly different, even though they're talking about the same number, because there must be a difference in the formula. And while CCP hasn't done an official announcement on this, we are in discussions with them. We've alerted them to this. They know this, and this is a calculation difference that has existed for quite some time, but is very obvious now because of this massive active ISK delta we see here, which is the combination of people going inactive after 90 days plus people getting banned by GM actions. And so we'll see later that the money supply graph talks about 2,500 trillion money supply, while this graph shows 2,380 trillion in the money supply, vastly reduced from the beginning of the month because it looks like there was another massive ban wave. And if you're looking at the forums and Reddit, then I do believe that, because there's a lot of people talking about bans right now. And so and before I pass it on to you guys for comment, I want to point out one thing, and that is, if you look at the history of the active IS delta and faucet and sinks, then if you look at faucets, yeah, December is always very high. It's always the highest of the month because of winter Nexus. It is again, but it's about the same as last year, so nothing too worrisome there. If we're looking at sinks, they are also very high, which is good. If your faucets are high, your sinks should be high, and that's a very good thing. The biggest part of that is asset safety, 25 trillion, but I'll get back to that in a second. And then we have the active IS delta, which is I think the highest ever here, 263 trillion deleted from the money supply. And this would make sense if we were in February or in March, because when we had the 7-day free Omega and the expansion drop, that was November. And so 90 days from November would be December, January, would be February. But it wouldn't be now. This doesn't make sense. This is not people going inactive that came back in September or something. This must be, I don't have proof of this, but I am 99% sure that this is a massive, massive ban wave that CCP conducted here. I'll open it up to the floor for any comments.
I've seen the different reports of ban waves, and I know of some ban waves, but it was surprising to me that it was so huge. So I'm questioning if it is a data issue, as there are other data issues in this MER. But if it is huge, it must have been that they've finally been cracking down on like RMT, like a lot more, because they had been focusing, or at least to me, they'd been focusing on botting more than RMT. So maybe they've shifted. I do know of like 3 or 4 people that got neg-walted, which were then later reinstated. So I think if it was them being very proactive on neg-walting and bans, you might see a big activist delta in the positive, as some of them are overturned the next month. So it'll be interesting to see.
Possibly, but at the magnitude that we're seeing there, and 200 trillion, of bandwidth. It's either way, it's huge, and it's probably not all erroneous. So either way, I think it's a positive, probably a net positive signal that CCP is going after bots.
I mean, it's always
RMT.
good to have a huge active, massive sync anyway like this, simply to keep the ISK supply down. Like, we don't want that going up as fast as it possibly can, like it has over the previous years.
It's true, but if it's a
Even
lot
so,
of people
like,
leaving, it's not very good for the game.
yeah, true, but like on this one, if you ignore the activist delta, we've got a 30 trillion net delta. So Faucets is 31.5 trillion higher. Like, that's just shy of a 1.5% increase in money supply in 1 month. I would consider that not healthy. As far as a video game goes, yes, it's very well managed, but
Yep.
as far as EVE goes, I think it's still a problem that needs to be solved. Otherwise, you're just going to suffer. Like, all the newer players and poor players, as it were, people who don't have billions and billions of ISK, are going to suffer years down the line when everything else just gets way more expensive. Especially things like
I dream of the day when EVE can implement demand into NPC pricing. Like, if everyone is doing selling overseer personal effects, they just go down in price.
I mean, that is such a no-brainer, Jijek, right? I mean,
I have drunkenly suggested to them that they should have a system kind of like the Monetary Policy Committee that the Bank of England does, like every month or something. You just got 3 nerds like me, Angry, Jijek, and Oz. Because we're like, yo, what should we set the taxes to today?
The Fed. Angry had some objections. Angry, tell us your objections.
No, it's essentially be implementing DBM for all commodity based income, and I don't think that's great because of
it
how
definitely
poorly DBS turned out.
I agree. It definitely can't be
what they really should do is just what was I thinking? What was I gonna say? My brain doesn't work so good today.
Angry, while you're thinking about that, I mean, we saw that now in Winter Nexus. Last year, the last couple of years, the overseer personal effects generated in Winter Nexus were a massive ISK faucet, the biggest one in the game, right? Even bigger than Crimson Harvest.
Yeah.
And what they did this year was just remove that from HiSec, right? So there was no OPEs dropped in HiSec, and so overall the spike seemed to be a lot lower from Winter Nexus, and so the ISK printed was a lot
but there
lower.
was also a lot more complaining than last year. That was the main source of complaining, is that people in HiSec went to the Winter Nexus events like, oh, these suck, and they didn't want to do them.
Yeah, exactly. So my point, and I think Drake's point, was that if you did dynamic pricing for OPEs for the event, for example, then you could avoid having to completely nerf one part of space and then make people unhappy, and rather say, hey, this is dynamic pricing. You guys generated so much in the beginning of this event that the price has now dropped down. And I think that would be actually the more acceptable way and the more understandable way for the community.
I don't think so, because what happens then is that you quickly get to an equilibrium where people find there's one part of space that's better for doing this specific event than what other one CPC balance it to, and they'll just go run it there, and you'll. I don't think it's essentially the same end result, but with I mean, because CCP can balance what they set the dynamic pricing equilibrium point to. So why do that when they can just skip the middleman and just set the price of the goods directly, or just have them drop lower grades of overseer personal effects? And
I just feel like the story would be better, because like this year, I mean, the CCP didn't announce that there was a change made to overseer personal effects in Winter Nexus. The people just found out in the first few weeks, and then the story was kind of bad because, not even the CSM we found out later, right? So it's not I don't think it's a good look to have it be like a random decision that you say, okay, and they didn't even explain it, so the community didn't understand why OPEs were slashed. I knew, because the past 2 years I've been telling CCP, look, like, I would do something about the ISK printing during winter Nexus because it's going to drive inflation. But this was kind of like a very, I don't know, heavy-handed way of implementing it, and I would prefer like a dynamic thing. Having said that, it's never going to happen. So I think you're safe, Ingrid.
I think, like, if hypothetically they were to do it, first of all, it wouldn't be proportional, and I think that maybe the events are the one place where it wouldn't make sense, because you get those things only during the event. So clearly the supply only exists then, and it would tank the value. But there's certain other aspects of the game where, for instance, Blue Loot is a great example to me, because it hasn't been inflation adjusted for since it came out, right? There are a lot of things in the game that have always paid out the same, whereas if you are getting module drops, they are inflation adjusted by their very nature of how you turn them into ISK. And that, like, if nobody's running wormhole sites or fewer people are doing it, it makes people want to go into wormhole to make more money than they otherwise would. Running missions, for that matter.
This is why I think it should be kind of like, it's like a committee sort of thing where people like actively go and review it with CCP, and not it being an automated system, because automated systems are as good as the person implementing them. And as Angry says, like, the BRM system was kind of trash. And can you imagine if they implemented a dynamic pricing system and the value of red loot from abyssals just drops off a cliff overnight?
Yeah.
I can absolutely envision that happening.
Sure, but the thing that's good about red loot is that its value, not red loot, but the thing about abyssals, the main value of abyssals is in mutaplasmas, which is a self-regulating market. I've been telling you for a long time, they need a lot more of that rather than flat ISK payouts for a lot of activities. Like, wormholes do have that portion, which is sleeper salvage, but sleeper salvage is, like, we look at how the people who run C5 and C6, they don't salvage. They're not nearly as reliant on salvage as the lower classes, because the ISK payout is just so good.
You know, at the danger of completely derailing this MER talk, what I really think would be interesting would be like a trading index, right? Taxes adjusted by amount of trade happening in the region, which is which would really hurt GDAP, but it would absolutely, if the goal was to implement or to enforce or to revive other trade hubs, then that's what would make it happen. And I think, totally biased from a trading perspective, I think it would just make the game a lot more interesting, at least the trading game a lot more interesting again.
In high sec only,
and hauling.
In high sec only.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, asset safety. Let's quickly mention asset safety, because I mean, we have 25.5 trillion in there, and for people that are not regularly watching this number, this doesn't mean anything. But let me put it into context for you. The December value was 25 trillion. The last 12 months in total had 113. So I think about 60 or 70% of the asset safety tax paid throughout the year happened in November and December, which is because of the horde collapse in Dronets.
November.
Yeah, and this is 25 trillion with supers valued at 20 billion and titans valued at 60.
And refunds, huh? Refunds? Weren't there some refunds paid in this?
Yeah.
If they were, it wasn't listed in asset safety tax, so I assume that is a GM action in the activist delta. So
that's like specifically like avatars cost triple other titans.
I want to scroll up. I want to see if we can find the category for GM actions, if it's here. I know it's in the source CSV, but let's see if they put it in the graph.
There, I mean, it would be a positive and negative, right? So you would be easily able to find it. But there's commodity, there's insurance that is positive and negative, And then you have here, which is the structure module market. Oh, this is a course, right?
Yeah.
And it's not
Okay,
in
so I
here.
guess it's not on
No.
this chart. Yeah.
I'll just go into the CSV and find it.
But people in chat are saying that refunds weren't happening till January. So apparently,
Okay.
why would that be? Did they just not process it before because they were on vacation?
Well, the original, like at the very, very start, also, like there was a significant lag between people realizing they needed to get everything out of asset safety and it actually being available to do so, since that takes a few weeks.
Right.
Maybe it's just easier to get do everything at once instead of having a whole bunch of GMs doing it piecemeal for lots of people.
So if we're looking at this graph right here, this is faucets over time. And well, actually, I'm trying to zoom in, but it doesn't work well because I want to see last year as well. You can see this, the miscellaneous is the Crimson Harvest event, which this year was, it didn't have a double peak like last year, but still was massive. Crimson Harvest was big, and by the positive reaction from the community, that's not a surprise. But the overseer personal effects jump that we saw in last year just didn't happen at all for reasons we just discussed. If we're looking at the commodity market here, which includes overseer personal effects, right? Then we see a bump here that is, similar to last year, and we saw the big bump happening in January. But certainly, we're not going to see the same type of bump we saw last year, which was a similar bump in Winter Nexus as we saw from Crimson Harvest. That's not going to happen, and that's bad news for everyone that was hoping to make a ton of money in Winter Nexus, especially in HiSec, and it's good news for all economists that are hoping to curb inflation.
Angry, there's no GM entry
Yeah, I just realized
at
that.
all.
It's
Yeah.
you can see it. It's in your wallet journals, but they don't release it in the
Yeah, so
file, which I
that'll
think
be
is
that'll be part of
it's a
activity
good.
delta.
Yeah.
I am fairly sure that you were right, and they used to be on there though.
Yeah. Going back to Winter Nexus, we didn't see a bump, not going to see a bump. People are a bit disappointed, but I do agree that we probably don't need those two events, back to back with really high ISK faucets. I think it's kind of a waste. Like and I know it's holiday periods, that's when people have the time to play, et cetera, but probably spread it out a little and not make the peaks as high. And it's fine to have these, especially now that the sinks are actually quite good, historically speaking.
The one gripe I always have about these events is they massively over rely on things that inject ISK into the economy instead of just high value items that are rare enough so the value retains at least over time. Or if someone waits until the bulk of the trading is done, like halfway through the next year, and then sells the items. So you can generate massive player value through items that aren't an ISK faucet. I really wish CCP would do that more. Instead of just the lazy option of let's just print another 200 trillion ISK.
The interesting, one interesting player behavior you see in this is that everyone sells the loot after the event. So people always collect, and then sell it. Collect, and then sell it.
Time is literally money, and time selling is time not farming.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It'd be funny if they made the buy orders disappear the day the event ends, right? Because then you would create a lot more traffic during the event.
You always need OPE buy orders for people who run.
Yeah, it's true, but you could make it an event.
Yeah, call them
coin.
frozen OPEs.
It's just a crate of ice cream. for the overseers.
Now, I'm
Overseer
sitting on
personal
millions
ice
of
cream.
snowballs, guys. I'm sitting on millions of snowballs because back in the day, I don't know who remembers, but there was at least 1 year, I think several years, where you could refreeze your melted snowballs. And I'm still waiting for that to come back because there was a few years where I just bought all of them because they're worthless when they're melted. But I'm hoping for one day CCP bringing back the refreezing
Wasn't there
snowballs.
a guy who bought when snowballs were like first introduced with the festival launches? Someone bought a ton of the snowballs, and then when they all melted, he went
Yeah.
absolutely off the rails on the forums.
I hope it wasn't me, Drake. I hope it wasn't me. Don't look in the history. Okay.
Oh, it might have been. I'm actually going to look for that.
No, I don't post on the forums. That can't be me. So I post on the forums exactly one time a year. So this is the money supply we were talking about earlier. So clearly, the earlier sinks and faucets supply said, oh God, somebody just quoted me in chat. I can't say that. The ISK and sink faucets and sink graph said, 2300, which would have been a significant drop in money supply. This one doesn't, because this one doesn't include the GM actions yet, is the only really logical explanation here. Since I don't believe it's players leaving the activist delta. So this is probably going to be dropping down sometime in the future, 1 or 2 months out, as the bot accounts become inactive by the standards of 90 days not logging in. But overall, it's still like, if it wasn't for that, we'd have still a much quicker increasing money supply than we had for most periods of this game.
Or strike in the chat about filaments expiring. You can see the date that the event ends when the event is announced, and that is when they expire. And if they don't expire on that day, it means someone forgot to expire them on that day, which has happened in the past.
I did use some expires on the 8th things today. So they must have forgotten that.
I know exactly who to complain to about that.
I think it's less
I like
automatic.
that you can get the really, really, really cheap cerebral accelerators on the last day. Is the best ones for everyone.
Wait, are they the Chemtech boosters? Because I still have like a stack of 100 of those in my pack.
Yeah.
This is the velocity of ISK, and the bump you see here is from mostly from Plex, as you see here. But overall, at least what we can see is that for the last 2 or 3 years, at least ISK velocity hasn't dropped down again. Historically speaking, it's very, very, very low. For those of you that don't know what this is talking about, this is essentially talking about how many times each ISK is exchanged, and 0.2 means that that only every 5th ISK is actually trades hands in 30 days, in the 30-day period. And so
it is good though, because over the last 3 years, the money supply has gone up a massive amount. So the fact that this has stayed consistent is really good. Like, it's very positive.
Yeah,
It means
economically
trade has gone up
speaking,
a lot.
exactly. So, and economically speaking, this also means that inflation is curbed, because if you have a very high money supply connected with a very high ISK velocity, then the risk for inflation is much higher, because you have a lot of ISK that is exchanging hands. That is, that means that people are buying goods and competing for goods, and with more ISK in the game, the inflation formula gets heated up. And so, it is what it is. It's the last thing I want to talk about is the MPI. Thank you, Rillian, by the way, for gifting a community sub. Much appreciated. MPI is dropping rapidly again. And I mean, people are mining much, much more than they have been in a few years. So, yeah. No surprise. Any comment on the MPI, guys? It is what it is.
I think
Because
it'd
we're
be interesting.
shifting the bottleneck a bit.
Yeah, as I think the mining patch has been a massive success in terms of getting more people out to mine, especially with the people are really, really loving gambling on the abyssal modules for the mining stuff. I've never seen how much people enjoy rolling every single stat on the ore strip miners.
I
But
think
it'd be
the
quite
point
interesting
main
to see.
thing about that is that compared to other abyssal modules, or a bit so the way how PvE works, right? So with the abyssal market, you have a couple customer groups. So you have the PvPers who roll abyssal modules to get an edge in PvP, but also lose them at a fairly high rate. You have the PvEers who roll abyssal modules for more ticks. But the issue with that is that more damage is not necessarily, once you get to a certain point, right? More damage is not necessarily more ISK in the same proportion, because there's losses from like damage travel and locking targets and thresholds like that you lose when you roll for more extreme values on PvE equipment. But for mining, because the way that works, every bit of advantage on an abyssal when it comes to mining is reflected in directly higher
It's
throughput.
100% uptime,
You
essentially. Yeah.
also don't lose mining ships as often, even compared to PvE ships. So you at least so like it has a potential to pay off a lot more, because you'll get a lot more use out of your abyssal mining module.
But it's also funny from the fact that there are so many things to roll on the strip miners that the people gambling on it are trying to seek the perfect thing. But compared to other modules, the perfect thing is so vanishingly hard to obtain, relatively speaking. So
Yeah,
then,
drone damage module is like, does it have more damage? And that's it. Like, you got more damage, hooray, it's better.
well, on drone is if it gets more damage, but it's got red tracking or green velocity, then it's bricked because it can't apply. If you
Oh
get
no, I was thinking like just a DDA, like has
oh, yeah.
only one stat. Like you can compensate for it costing more CPU, but
Oh yeah.
Because
Cool.
the other parts of the mining ship don't really matter. Like you can't brick really. It's harder to get a bricked mining module from fitting.
The trade volume has been very high on them, and they've been very erratic. So it's actually besides the usefulness of them, it's the mutaplasmids have been a blast to just trade, because they're volatile, they're in high demand, they're limited supply. It's just fun to trade around with them. So good, good on CCP for implementing them. I like that. I like that concept. Okay. Any last minute words? Anyone?
I would do the Podgman update. I was expecting this month to be extremely crabby for Podgman with destruction down, but the destruction's actually gone up by 5%. It's been the highest since the Revenant expansion, and we're almost at the lowest ratio of crabbing to destruction. So it's, even though it's still unhealthy and there's still many things to do, and it's getting very close to printing 20 trillion again. This month was 17 trillion, which is very fucking high. There's the first swear word. Sorry.
Yeah, there goes my rating.
You've just lost your $2 in YouTube. So I was pleasantly surprised that it's still in a reasonably decent state. It's not gone out of hand, but the fact that it's up to 17 trillion is like a cause for concern.
Yeah. And are the bot bans going to impact Podgman heavily, Drake, or is that not an issue anymore?
There's one pack that hasn't returned. Then there were 2 packs that were banned that have returned immediately. Is the last thing that I noticed. And there's 2 packs that are constantly input broadcasting, and I don't know why they've not been banned.
Okay. Good. Jack, Angry, anything else? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up.
no, thanks for having us.
I think this might be the first month where something didn't change in the MER headers, so I'm going to start assuming this is how it's going to be going forward and start reloading stuff again.
Oh, very good.
You've jinxed it now. You've ruined all of next year. They're going to change every month.
Look, I don't know. I might wait till I'm done in Reykjavik, Angry. I mean, we're both going. I think we might want to wait till next month because I'm sure we'll have a meeting about it. Cool. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Next month I'm hoping that Okami can join us next month for the MER. I've already talked to him about it, so that would be very cool if he does. But either way, I will let you guys know, hopefully ahead of time. And I would love to have you back this year as many times as possible for these chats because I really enjoy them, and I think the conversation that we have is hopefully also very useful for the community.